Ashley Biden is the executive director of the Delaware Center for Justice, a nonprofit agency that provides an extensive range of programs and services and public education, advocacy, and policy work for youth and adults affected by the criminal justice system, including offenders, victims, and at-risk youth. She came to this leadership position after several years in settings such as the Delaware Department of Children, Youth, and Families, West End Neighborhood House, and Children's Reach Mental Health Center. In her work, she is tackling one of the defining issues of our time, mass incarceration of minority youth and adults. She is passionate about the seamless practice of clinical management and policy practice. I am so delighted to welcome her here and to hear what she has to share. Welcome, Ashley Biden.
Thank you, Dean, for the introduction. Hello, BSWs, MSWs, DSWs, and PhDs of 2015. I am truly grateful for the opportunity to congratulate and speak with you tonight. To the faculty, distinguished guests, parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers, wives, husbands, partners, and friends of the graduates, it's also a night to thank you for all your support through the late nights, writing papers, studying for tests, watching the kids, and just being there emotionally to support and encourage. It is truly an honor to speak with you tonight. Rutgers has a special place in my family's heart because my husband, Howard, who is here tonight, attended Rutgers undergrad and liked it so much that he came back for his master's and his PhD. I also, after I graduated with my master's in social work from the University of Pennsylvania, met my husband the night of graduation. I had a family member who was unfortunately in the hospital, and I went over in my cap and gown, and there I met my husband. So you never know. When I received a call from Marla Blunt Carter, assistant professor at Rutgers and lifelong family friend, asking if I would be the commencement speaker, it truly brought tears to my eyes. Not because I'm a social worker who's in touch with their emotions, although I am, but because earning my master's in social work is my proudest accomplishment to date. And I am so proud of this profession and have such admiration for those who choose this path. For the first time, I wasn't that nervous, maybe a little, about speaking in front of a crowd of 500 plus, because I felt like I'm amongst my people. We are a rare, special breed of individuals in a world obsessed with self-interest, greed, and getting ahead. Social workers possess a sacred sense of empathy and love for humanity that is both a true gift and great strength. Our profession is rooted in the core values of service, social justice, dignity and worth of any person, importance of human relationships, integrity, and competence. My journey started at a young age, as I'm sure it did for many of you. I was always asking questions, asking why the way things were and why they had to be that way. I was always drawn to helping others, whether the new girl in class or the stray cat on the street. I questioned my religion and always knew that God, whomever he, she, universal force was, that God was good and would love all Earth's creations equally. I had the privilege of attending a Quaker school, learning about social justice and the civil rights movement in kindergarten, and was encouraged to discuss social issues and challenge systems of oppression around the dinner table at home. Now, I will admit that I had a unique vantage point, as my father has been a public servant all my life, and my mother a public school teacher. And I am grateful for this privilege and cognizant of it. But it is more than that. Like many of you, the social work gene is imprinted in my DNA. I began my career in North Philadelphia, straight from college, working at a children's mental health clinic in Kensington, PA. I worked with therapists and psychiatrists as a clinical support and started taking classes at the University of Pennsylvania School of Social Policy and Practice. And my journey with obtaining my master's began. Since then, I've worked at a nonprofit working with youth aging out of foster care, worked in state government with adjudicated youth, youth with mental health concerns, and youth who have experienced care, learning about bureaucracy and systems of oppression. I began working in the criminal justice field because I saw firsthand the complex web of barriers that were spun, especially for Black men living in poverty, without access to adequate and fair counsel, court fees, time away from school and or family, and a criminal record that would cost money to expunge and limit the access to employment and financial scholarships. Institutionalized and often treated as criminals at such a young age. On the campaign trail with Dad in 2011, I decided it was time for a change. So I applied to be the Associate Executive Director at the Delaware Center for Justice, which is the lead criminal justice advocacy nonprofit in Delaware. Established in 1920 as the Prisoners' Aid Society, DCJ provides direct service programming, advocacy, research, and education to victims of crime, youth at risk, and adults who are affected by incarceration. It is a great honor to now lead my team as the executive director. This has been my path thus far. What path will you walk? What trail will you blaze? According to Professor Harold Levitt, social workers should become pathfinders. While effective problem solving requires mental vigor and hard analysis of the environment, and while effective implementing requires competence in getting things done through and with other people, effective pathfinding requires soul, imagination, personal commitment, and deep belief. Social workers must be visionaries and risk takers, able to formulate fresh approaches and challenge the status quo. Social work is known as the helping profession, and although accurate, there is so much more to the profession than helping. Social workers take complex issues and break them down, analyze ideas, thoughts, actions, systems. We are problem solvers and are tasked with the great responsibility of empowering individuals, groups, and communities to reach their potential. This is pathfinding. Although there is tremendous progress made by those who have gone before us and who have paved the path, there is so much to be done and a long way to walk. It is astounding to me that many of the same struggles of the civil rights movement, excessive use of force and police brutality, inequities in education, women's rights, voting rights, are the same issues that we are protesting today, 5 decades later. We must know, understand, and teach the history of institutional racism and structural violence. We must teach the realities of redlining, decades of discriminatory practices that marginalized whole communities and had lasting and devastating economic, health, and social consequences. Historic discrimination has caused traumatized individuals and communities, and we can be angry, but this anger needs to be transformed into action that allows true systems change to occur. As Martin Luther King said, hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. What I learned by listening to others explain their experience is that most ignorance is learned. You often find that individuals who are racist, misogynist, homophobic, etc., grew up in households or environment where the other, or those who are different, are feared. Fear often breeds hate. Now, I'm not saying that you should ever condone someone's hateful or racist rhetoric or actions, but rather try to analyze and understand why individuals feel and act this way, and create opportunities for education, truth-seeking, counseling, and exposure. The oppressed often become the oppressor in response to the normative culture of anger and hate of differences. According to Pablo Freire, during the initial stage of struggle, the oppressed, instead of striving for liberation, tend themselves to become oppressors or sub-oppressors. The very structure of their thought has been conditioned by the conditions of the concrete, existential situation by which they were shaped. Their ideal is to be men, but for them, to be men is to be oppressors. This is the model of humanity. We must be cautious to avoid this pitfall. We as social workers must also be cautious to not limit the conversation to only race. We must approach the analysis of oppression through a convergent framework where the object of oppression is cut across by such factors of race, class, gender, culture, language, and ethnicity. The truth is, I don't think as social workers, whether you've taken a clinical or macro path, that we can separate the two paths. Both macro and micro practice are closely connected, and if we want true systems change, we must make civic participation a moral imperative. We must enter the political world of civic and community participation, of self-governance and responsiveness to larger problems. We need universal participation in public action, politics, and the realm of we. I will no longer listen to others complain about the state of affairs unless they voted to change them. And I'm not saying this as the daughter of the Vice President. I am saying this as a social worker who has spent the last 13 years in the field and has learned by having intimate experience with the field of social justice that justice can be achieved when individuals take back their right to vote and exercise it. I won't get into it, but the fact that it takes billions of dollars to win a presidential election, well, I will just say that it's time to pass the Fair Election Now Act or a close equivalent, and I hope social workers will lead this effort. When I started to think about what I wanted to convey to my fellow social workers in this commencement address, I thought it would be most useful to share the lessons I've learned since earning my MSW, in hopes it may be helpful to all of you during your professional and personal journey. I still have much to learn, but this is what I've learned thus far. 1, the most important and most powerful tool for creating change is by having self-awareness. Having the confidence to know your own biases and own your own privilege. Your biases will rise up in unexpected moments. Recognize them and act the opposite of how you are moved to act and feel. You must know who you are with all your perfectly imperfect strengths, weaknesses, and skills. 2, self-care is imperative. We must put the oxygen mask on ourselves before assisting others. How can we teach others to better care for themselves when we're not practicing what we preach? There is no credibility or integrity in that. This work is stressful. Life is unfair and filled with struggle. Take walks, exercise, go to therapy, meditate. One thing a day that says, I'm caring for myself, therefore I can care for others. 3, know the history and be passionate and assertive about reform. But long-term anger will not serve us or those we are trying to empower. As mentioned before, take the anger, the injustice and act, vote, organize, educate. 4, nothing for the community without the community. As social workers, we must be intimately knowledgeable about and sociable with the populations we serve. It's easy for one to walk into the office every day and see clients and then return into a different space. Know your clients, walk the community, patronize their businesses, know the leaders, church members, clergies, community centers, schools, civic associations, and ask questions. No one knows their needs better than the people themselves. They just need to be asked. Don't presume to know all the answers. Meet individuals and communities where they are. 5, real change in policies and practice begin with systems change. Participate and educate individuals, communities, and groups about the importance of school boards to create educational reform, civic association leaders to create changes in the community. Know your state representatives, congressmen, mayors, or better yet, become them. Social workers can make some of the greatest politicians. Participation in presidential elections is important, but I would argue that state elections are more important because states have the real power and the autonomy to make decisions. 6, never settle for the status quo. 6, never settle for the status quo. When you are told it can't be done, as a social worker, it is your duty and obligation to figure out how it can be done. Be a creative problem solver. Keep asking questions and pushing boundaries. I have found that assertiveness and not aggressiveness has been instrumental in creating change. Creating buy-in by inviting others to participate in the problem solving, even those who aren't on our side. Wisest advice I was ever given was, it doesn't matter who gets credit as long as it gets done. 7, you can't help anyone unless they want to be helped and are at the stage of contemplation and action. The only thing you can do is help motivate them to get closer to this stage. 8, allow yourself to be vulnerable, authentically being you. Vulnerability has often been viewed as a weakness, but it is actually a great strength. By allowing yourselves to be authentic, you are allowing others to feel comfortable enough to let their guards down, connect, and ultimately trust. 9, with our thoughts, we create the world. Strengths-based perspective should not only be applied to those we serve, but to our own lives. We create our realities. Choose your thoughts wisely. And 10, some days it will feel overwhelming. Try to find the humor in perplexing situations. Laugh, even if you laugh until you cry. I am so truly excited for all of you. The journey of pathfinding and trailblazing can truly begin. We are all in this together. We have a sacred obligation to improve the quality of life for all humanity. To all my fellow social workers, I am a lifelong member of the Change Agents Club. Welcome. You are the ones we have been waiting for. Congratulations, Change Agents. Change on.